So welcome everyone. Today is the webinar on the Municipal Community Grants Program for 2026. My name is Jillian Armstrong. I am the Grants and Communications Manager for the County Foundation. I'm joined here today with some other representatives from the County Foundation, including Dominic Jones, Tanya Sutherland Stewart, as well as some representatives from the municipality. So thanks everyone for joining, and we're just going to get the ball rolling because there's a lot to cover today. So this is our agenda for this morning. So we're going to do some introductions, as I've just done. We're going to be talking about the 2026 Municipal Community Grants Program. This is going to include an overview of the cash grant stream, as well as an overview of the in-kind grant stream. We're going to talk through the application process, including some tips on applying if it's your first time. And then at the very end, we're going to have a Q&A. So I'll ask everyone to sort of hold off on questions until the end. So thanks very much for staying patient, staying engaged, and let's jump in. So the Municipal Community Grants Program, it provides financial and in-kind assistance to community organizations delivering programs, services, and activities that enhance the quality of life for Prince Edward County residents. So through this program, local tax dollars directly support the people, places, and initiatives that strengthen our community every day. So this grant program is made possible through funding from the Prince Edward County municipality. So it's made possible through our property tax dollars. And is administered by the County Foundation. So we're a third party, we're separate to the municipality, and we just help with administering the program. But the program itself is funded by the municipality and funded by ourselves. So we're going to start off with an overview of the cash grant program. So this is a bit of an overview of the program for this year. So this includes the total amount of available funding for 2026. Which is just over $121,000. And so I mentioned that for 2026, this is the total amount available for dispersing, but it's actually not the total amount available for the grant program. That is actually closer to $149,000, but there is $28,000 of that that is already allocated to multi-year grants. So for those who may be unfamiliar, this program went through a pretty intensive relaunch last year after an intensive review of the program by the municipality. And that included reworking the program to include multi-year grants. Now, multi-year grants are only available in years in which there is going to be multiple years of funding available. Because it is funded by the municipality, each year they go through an annual budget deliberation, and the total pot of funding for the grants is decided during that process. This year, for those who may be out of the loop, is an election year, which means we're going to have a new council. And so because of that, funds can't be allocated past the term of council. So because we're in the last year of council, that's why there is only single year grants available for this year. So just wanted to kind of clarify that for folks and make sure that you understood. That's the reason that there's no multi-year grants. They haven't gone away. They're just not available for this year. So the maximum grant size that people can apply for is $15,000. However, typical grant size tends to range between $3,000 to $5,000. I think that's generally in terms of expectations of the grant program, where most applicants would potentially find themselves. So just when you're thinking of kind of what the ask for the program is going to be, I sort of keep that in mind. The deadline to apply is March 2nd at 4 p.m. And just so everyone's aware, to honor the municipality's longstanding commitment to supporting food security, there's at least $20,000 that will be dedicated toward that area. In terms of eligibility criteria, applicants must be a community organization, which is defined as groups of people working collectively with volunteer governance without profit motives for the benefit of Prince Edward County's community. They provide programs and services and events to be accessed by the entire Prince Edward County community or by specific segments of the population who may be underserved or at risk for negative outcomes. The community organizations may have formal or informal structures and can include incorporated nonprofits, registered charities, ad hoc groups, and unincorporated organizations. So this is a pretty key distinction compared to a lot of the county foundations grant programs that we provide funding to. In this case, because the funding is coming through the municipality, we're able to grant towards non-registered charities. So this is just an overview, and this is on our website, of ineligible organizations. So this would include individual households, for-profit businesses. I'm not going to go through the entire list today because this information's on our website, but if anyone wants to refer back to it, it's, like I said, on the website. And also, if you wanted to rewatch the webinar, you could pause here as well. This is the list of ineligible activities and expenses. So this is what the grant funding may not be used for. And again, I'm not going to read through this entire list. It's quite extensive today, but I did want to call attention to fundraising campaigns, events, and activities. So if you are planning to apply for a cash grant, it cannot be towards fundraising. However, if you are interested in fundraising specifically, that's what you're looking for support for, you can apply through the in-kind grants for that. Now, speaking of the in-kind grant stream, we're going to jump into this now. So what is in-kind funding? So in-kind refers to services or resources that are offered by the municipality as valued by the fees and charges bylaw that can help support the work of the applicant and reduce expenses of the work or initiative proposed. So the available funding for 2026 for in-kind is $20,000. And materials that do not appear in the bylaw are not eligible for in-kind funding. So we're going to kind of walk through specifically what it means to apply for in-kind funding, how you can kind of wade through the charges and fees bylaw to make sure that what you're applying for is actually eligible for support. And so we provided some examples of what in-kind support looks like. So that could include venue rentals. So specifically a municipal venue, you cannot apply for support for something that is not owned by the municipality. Equipment, services, and labor. So for example, maybe you wanted to host an event and it needs a road closure. That would be something that you could apply through in-kind, for example. So timelines, again, very similar. It's the same deadline, February 2nd to March 2nd at 4 p.m. And so this is the primary intake. So projects or events taking place throughout the entire year, June 1st, 2026 to May 31st, 2027, the full pool of funding is available. So that full $20,000 is available currently as part of the spring intake. So if you're planning to apply, we strongly encourage you to apply during the primary intake. And the reason for that is, so the secondary intake for the in-kind grants will only occur if there is any funding remaining after the primary intake. So I just wanted to kind of clarify that. So if you're having any kind of event that's taking place between June 1st to May 31st, you can apply in the primary intake. And the secondary intake would support projects happening between November 1st and May 31st, again, 2027. But that intake will only occur if there is funding still available after the primary intake. So all events, regardless of when they occur during the year, can apply during the primary intake period. So eligibility for the in-kind grants. So it mirrors the community grants program with the exception that mandated arts organizations may apply for in-kind funding. For those who also are unfamiliar, there is a new fund that was established last year, supported by funding through the municipal accommodation tax as well as the county foundation, called the PEC Arts Fund. So now arts organizations apply through that fund specifically, but they can apply for support through the in-kind grant stream through the Municipal Community Grants program. So in-kind grants can be used for fundraising activities, highlighted that earlier. Organizations or community groups that have been operating for less than a year are only eligible to apply for in-kind funding. So if this is a new initiative, a new group project, and you've only been around for less than a year, then unfortunately you can only apply, well, not unfortunately, you can still apply for in-kind funding, at least for the time being, and then in the future would be able to apply for the cash funding stream. Only one request may be submitted per applicant for each intake period. If an applicant does not receive the maximum amount of funding, which is $2,000 during the primary intake, they may reapply during the secondary intake. So I'll break that down a little bit further. So say an applicant is only applying for $5,000 for, or not 5,000, $500 for the in-kind grant stream. And they receive that $500. The maximum amount of funding that can be received per organization each year for in-kind is $2,000. So if they have not received that full $2,000, they could apply during the secondary intake, again, pending availability of funding. Application process. So now I'm going to go through both the cash and in-kind application processes and what it actually looks like to apply for these grants. So if anyone, on this call has received grant funding previously, our recommendation is generally, it's a good idea to submit your grant reports for any previous funding before submitting a new application, if that's possible. Now, in some cases, that's not possible. For example, you have applied for funding for something specific that's still ongoing, then you may not be able to submit your final report yet. However, we do ask that you provide a status update to us on your previous funding to be eligible for this year's round of funding. So that can be, an email to me, Jillian, with just an overview of where you're at currently in the project, how things have gone. And that will be included as part of your application for this year so that adjudicators can be aware of that previous funding and how it was utilized. So now we're going to go through a walkthrough of the cash grants. So that will include the application form and the budget process. So if you've been on our website recently, the application forms are available there. We have an online form as well as a PDF form. So this is just a screenshot of the online form. One thing I'll highlight with the online form is that you are able to save your work. However, we always recommend that you save an external copy somewhere else. Rather than, going through all the hard work of inputting your application into the online form, saving your work, things with technology go wrong, things can go awry. And unfortunately, we're not able to save an application that has been saved through our backend. So you would really risk losing your hard work if you're exclusively putting your information just straight into the online form. So I kind of caution with that is you are absolutely able to save as you go, but saving an external copy is always a good idea. So for the cash application form, before we sort of get into the applicant overview, there's the contact details. So including the information about who you are, who your organization is, providing, if you have a website, so we can see kind of further information about your group and its activities. And then along with sort of the contact details, we ask for an applicant overview. And so this kind of section of the form specifically is about who you are, what you do in the community, and how it helps Prince Edward County residents. So we ask you to describe the primary activities of your organization. So that includes programs and services, events, anything along those lines. Who do you serve in the community? How many PEC residents? And I'm going to stop here for a second, just because it's so important, this part of the application. So we really encourage you to be as specific as possible when describing, who you're serving in the community, how many residents. This is a municipal funded program, so showing the impact to the residents of Prince Edward County should be an essential part of your application. And that should be not just in this section, but in all sections of your application. It should be top of mind. It's how we see that there is benefit to the community, that it can be accessed by a wide range of residents. So we really encourage you to include as much specificity in this area as possible. And, if you're thinking to yourself, okay, well, we're relatively new, maybe we've only been around for 2-3 years, or maybe you're proposing a new initiative, it's really helpful to include information about, I specifically, want to know, like, have you done the research on this program that you're suggesting if it's something new? How many people, like, have you spoken to are interested in a program like this? How many people do you think would participate? Have you sort of done that sort of general groundwork in showing, again, what the benefit would be to Prince Edward County and our residents? As part of the applicant overview, telling us about how you ensure your activities are open and accessible. Again, this is a community program. It's in the grants, like trying to have that wide range of accessibility is a really important piece of the puzzle. And lastly, for how long has your organization been operating? Again, if it's less than a year, then you're only able to apply for the in-kind grant stream. Now, as part of the application process, there's a section specifically on financials. So we ask, what is the total grant request for 2026? So as I mentioned, it's only single year grants available for this year. So if the maximum grant size for the cash grant stream is $15,000, say you're asking for $3,000 for your grant, one of the questions that we also ask is, what is the total initiative cost? Now, you may be receiving only $3,000 for your requested grant. Maybe you receive partial funding, only $2,000. But what is the total initiative going to cost? In a lot of cases, you'll have other revenues that are being contributed towards that project or initiative. So if that's different than the total grant amount requested, then just providing that information as well. Now, one of the different changes that were implemented last year as part of the relaunch of the Municipal Community Grants program is that organizations can now receive operating or initiative support. So previously, the grant program was exclusively, projects, programs based. But in order to allow more flexibility in what the grant funding was supporting, organizations could also receive operational support. So depending on what kind of request you have as part of the application, what you're looking for the grant funding for, that could be either related to your operations or a specific initiative. So including a budget that is going to show the revenues and expenses related to that request. And I'll get into some tips about that in a second. I'll also just add that there is an optional budget template that's available on our website. Now, in some cases, grant programs are, very specific. They want it like a mandatory budget based off of the format that they provided. We don't have that in this case for the cash grant stream. This is just an optional budget template that is just to assist you if you aren't really sure what that looks like. So that's available on our website if you're looking for that. And then lastly, financial statements. So they are mandatory for any request that's above $5,000. Now, when we say financial statements, the difference between that and a budget. So a budget, again, would be for a specific, project or a specific request tied to the grant funding, while your financial statements show kind of the overall health of your organization. And so it's a little bit different in what we're looking for. It just shows that you're tracking on sort of that larger scale. It doesn't need to be audited from an auditor, but just, again, like showing that overall financial health. So I'm going to go into some tips specific to budget because it's a really, really important part of the application. So we ask to provide detailed information to clearly identify how the requested grant amount will be used and the impact of the grant on your goals. I see a lot of organizations get sort of the hiccup in this part where they put in the request for the grant, but it's really not clear in their budget where the grant will be directed, what it's helping. It makes it hard for adjudicators to also be aware of, how it's going to make a difference on, what you're proposing, what you're looking to do in the community. So trying to be as specific as possible about how that grant funding will be used is a really, really key part of your application. So one thing to note is that this is a highly, highly competitive grant program. There's a lot of people on this call today and a lot of organizations that have never applied before, which is really, really great, to see some new blood, new faces like starting to apply for the grant program. But it is really competitive. It services a variety of different sectors in the community. And so because of that, not all grant requests may be able to be fully funded. In a lot of cases, grants are partial funding. So providing clear details in your budget, such as priority expenses and what could proceed with partial funding, can really help adjudicators to assess whether the funding available would still make a meaningful difference to your request. And don't be afraid to include a notes section, being as clear as possible, including as much information is helpful, specific to the budget section. Okay, so now we're getting into sort of what I like to refer to as the meat and potatoes of the application. So this is the activities section. So this is what are you looking to do? What are you hoping to achieve? What are your goals? So describe what activities or outcomes this grant funding will enable you to carry out for PEC residents. What are you hoping to achieve? So again, you're receiving this grant funding. What does success look like? What are the goals? What are the objectives as part of this application? And this is the part where you want to be really, really clear and precise with what you are describing. We don't want to get lost in sort of a word salad to try and determine, okay, what are they looking for support for? It's not really clear. So again, just to really get to sort of the bare bones, like, okay, what is the goals? What are you trying to do? So that's going to look different depending on what you're requesting support for. So for operations and initiative funding, if we're looking at just an operations funding, describe your overall work in the community and how this grant will allow you to carry out those goals. So even if you're looking for operational support, I really would encourage organizations to think about, okay, this is how we're going to have an impact. Here's the specific thing that we're able to do as a result of this funding, even if it's, directing funding towards staffing or directing, other administrative costs. I feel like, it's the heart and soul of an application is what is it going to do in the community. And so you still want to kind of be able to outline what those goals are and what it will allow you to do. And then initiative funding, describe your plans for the initiative. So, this could be hosting a free event in the park or creating a new program. It's usually, something specific. And this includes relevant details such as timelines or dates, cost for participants, relevant partnerships or collaborations. And again, like some of those aspects are still important for operational support. But again, just trying to kind of be as specific with that and again, as clear cut. Now we're going to kind of get into the continuation of the activity section with how does this benefit Prince Edward County and why is this a priority for our community? So we encourage you to use different resources to help support your application. So using vital signs data. So for anyone who is unfamiliar, vital signs data is, a significant part of the work of the County Foundation. We have a free online data bank as well as annual reports that speak to our local community and its well-being. So it tracks, everything from health to education to environment and a variety of other different categories. So it's an excellent resource, not just for this grant program, but for a lot of other grant funding. So I definitely would encourage you to take a look. Last year's report was specifically on social infrastructure. And I think, if you live in the county, it's probably worth looking at just to get some perspective on kind of what's going on in Prince Edward County and what the needs are. And then there's other resources, the county's strategic plan. This is a municipal funded program. The county has its own goals, its own objectives. So how does this project sort of assist with that? As well as the community safety and well-being plan. So these are just different resources that helps you explain what the community need is. And the reason that we encourage applicants to use this kind of evidence as part of their application is, I can tell you from looking at all the different grant applications over the years that most applications have some kind of community benefit. Like if you asked anyone, does this project or this idea, would this benefit the community? The answer is probably most likely going to be yes. I'm going to say 99% of applications we receive are good ideas and would be a good thing for the community. But proposals are really strengthened when they clearly use data or identify specific needs, opportunities, and gaps, rather than relying primarily on anecdotal evidence. So anecdotal evidence would be like, I've talked to Richard, my neighbor down the street, and he thinks this is a great idea, and he said that this is a need. Well, is that sort of backed up with other sources as well? So it can be a useful tool in the tool belt as part of the grant application. And then how will you carry out the work you are requesting grant support for? So again, timelines, community partners, resources needed. This is all a part of organizational capacity. So how are you able to meet the goals that you are setting out? And then lastly, what are your overall goals and how will this be measured? So it's good to kind of have the general goals outlined, but it's also just important at this part, it's sort of, day one of a grant, to look at how am I going to be measuring these outcomes? Is that, doing surveys along the way? Is that doing interviews? Are we doing kind of specific focus groups with, participants over the next few weeks? Starting to kind of have an idea of how you'll be tracking that information. Because I can tell you there's nothing worse than you get to the end of a grant and you go, oh snap, I said I was going to do X, Y, Z, and I wasn't tracking that along the way, and now trying to like make up for lost time. No one likes to be in that position. Okay, and then I'm going to go into sort of some general tips for strengthening an application. And this is applicable for both cash and in kind. So read the guidelines carefully and then read them again. I can tell you that there's nothing worse than when we receive an application and immediately right off the bat we see, oh, they're not eligible. Like, what they're proposing can't be funded through this grant program. You really want to make sure that you're reading the criteria carefully, especially when it comes to eligibility, because you don't want to put in all that work just to discover that what you're proposing is just not possible through this grant program. Plan to submit early and always save a copy of your application. Again, I'll harp on that again, but having an external copy of your application is really, really important. Also just for your own records and being able to make sure that you have that easily accessible to reference back to along the way. And submitting early, especially if you plan to submit online. Again, there's nothing worse than finding out there's been a tech problem right as you're about to submit and it's right before the deadline. And unfortunately, we do not accept late applications. So you just want to make sure you give yourself enough time to be able to submit and make sure that, you can check that off the list with ease. Use clear and concise language in your application. I really can't stress this point enough. I think sometimes when we're talking about a grant application, we can get sort of stuck in the weeds of trying to include so much information that you're checking every single box, but then your message gets lost. You have to kind of keep in mind that adjudicators are potentially reading like 40 plus applications. So you want to make their lives easy. You want to make your project memorable. And if you're bogging an application down with tons and tons of like words and complications and word salad, your message gets lost in what you're trying to achieve. And it also makes it harder to kind of remember what you're looking to do. So we don't want to have to fight through it should be, from the first sentence, clear what you're looking to do. Applications should highlight the impact for PEC residents and be specific about the need and the benefit to the community. This kind of feeds into the last slide of what we were talking about in terms of like using resources data to kind of back up what you're looking to do. and highlighting the impact for PEC residents. So what is the information that you can provide about how this would be effective in the community, accessible to residents, make a significant impact? Be careful how you use tools like AI to assist with grant writing. This is actually the first time that I've included this in one of our webinars, but I think it's now sort of crossed the threshold and it's worth mentioning. I'm seeing AI, incorporated more into all of our lives, and it can be a really great tool. However, I do caution that you don't want a grant application that's entirely written by a robot. As much as it's a great tool and can be a great resource, for example, like if you're looking to meet a word count and you're like, okay, I need to shorten this, popping it into an AI tool can be really great and useful. However, if you start gearing into an entire application that's been written by AI, as we become more and more familiar with what that writing looks like, it becomes very clear that it wasn't written by you. And it can be a bit of a turnoff, like in terms of, being able to support a project where, it's people care about people and we want to hear what you have to say and why you think that this is a great thing to support through grant funding. We don't want to necessarily hear what the tiny robots have to say. But that's not to say don't use it, but just be careful with how you're using it. And then lastly, use your resources. So we're always here to help. I popped my email into the chat if anyone has any follow-up questions. But I promise we're not here yet. We're still going on to the in-kind grants, but I just wanted to kind of make sure that we had sort of those general tips for everyone. Okay, now we're going to go through the walkthrough of the in-kind applications. I'm going to take a quick sip of water. Okay, so now we're transitioning back to the in-kind funding stream. So similar to the cash grant stream, the in-kind funding application form, there is a PDF printable version as well as an online form as well. So you can find both of those on our website, which are available now. So in-kind application form is actually a bit more straightforward. I'd say like it's got fewer questions. It's a little bit more concise. We ask for the contact information for you as the applicant, the amount requested, and we'll get really specific into what this process looks like. But in this case, there is a specific budget template that you must use as part of the application. So you have to complete your budget using the in-kind budget template. And you will upload your budget as a separate file. And the reason we have you do this is because it really walks you through the charges and fees bylaw, which is your amount requested is specifically tied to the costs and fees as outlined in that bylaw. Application details. So what are you looking to do in the community and how will it benefit Prince Edward County? How many people will directly benefit from this initiative, including any relevant dates and times related to this request. What is your total budget for this initiative? So is there any other support? So now we're going to kind of go into sort of a little bit of like a practical section, walking you through the budget template for the in-kind grants, because this to me is sort of the meat and bones of this particular application. So applicants must use the document template in-kind grant budget workbook for applicants. And again, this is available on our website, both in the online form as well as in the in-kind section at the bottom of the Municipal Community Grants website page. So the note on the grant size is the value of your grant will be equal to the cost of the municipal services you use, up to a maximum amount of $2,000 per year. So step one of the process is outlining what are the services that you need. So a good place to start is by looking at the fees and charges bylaw from the municipality. See if what you were requesting support for is actually in the bylaw. If it is not, we'll get to that in a second. And then you will calculate the dollar value of your in-kind request based off of what you were looking for support for. So this is what the budget document looks like. And in this document, there's also a link to the fees and charges bylaw. And this also gives a bit of perspective on like what are the typical things that people would be looking for support for through the in-kind grant stream. And so, that can include garbage disposal, venue rental, Picton Fairgrounds rental, the different meeting spaces, ice rental, labor and equipment, so staff time comes into this. That provides a little bit of a perspective on like what are the typical requests through the in-kind grant stream. And then right beside that, it shows the bylaw schedule. So if you open up the fees and charges bylaw, it's outlined in different sections called schedules. And those schedules would be Schedule C, waste management. So what we're going to do for the purposes of today is we're going to go through venue rental because that's one of the most common requests received through this grant stream. And so we'll go through that process. So outlining what services you need. So describe the request in detail, include dates and times and quantities. So in this case, we're specifically looking to rent the Ameliasburg Town Hall. We're a nonprofit, so we'd be looking at the nonprofit rate for this. And we want to rent it for 2 days for 10 hours a day. So for this request, we would refer to Schedule P, Community Hall Rentals. That includes Ameliasburg, Bloomfield, Athol, blah, 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 blah. And then this is what the document looks like for the charges and fees bylaw. And so again, this is just a screenshot, but this is linked on our website page, so it's easily accessible for you guys to find. And then we look at calculating the costs. So the example request, Ameliasburg Town Hall, we look at Schedule P for community hall rentals. And then because, again, we're a nonprofit, we look at the nonprofit community group hourly rates and look at that amount. And it says beside the fee, whether it's HST applicable. So in this case, it is. It's got a little Y beside it. And so we note that we also need to include HST as part of our calculation. So then going back to the budget document, again, it walks you through step 1, step 2, which we've just spoken about. And then step 3 is taking the amount. So if we were looking specifically to rent the hall for 2 days at 10 hours per day, that total cost would be $250. And then our last step is to add HST because it's applicable in this case. And so that would be $250 plus 13% HST. And then this is our total cost amount at the bottom there. So submitting your application, all the application materials can be found on the County Foundation's website. So you're able to submit with online form. If you submit an application online, you'll also receive an automatic confirmation email upon submission. So if you've done that, you know you've submitted everything properly. And along with that, you'll get a copy of your application as well as the other materials that you've submitted as part of your application. And then we also accept applications with a print form. And so we have a PDF form available on our website that can be printed. And that can be either submitted by email if you want to scan a copy to us, to info@thecountyfoundation.ca, or it can be dropped off at our office or mailed to us. And there's our address there as well as on our website. Okay, so we've made it to the end. Sorry, it's been a lot of me talking and going back and forth between 2 different programs. So now we're going to get into the Q&A and have a little discussion about any questions that anyone has. So I'll stop sharing my screen now. And basically, it's now sort of your opportunity if there's any specific questions that you have. What I'll sort of say in regards to questions is, if there's questions that are really specific to your application, like you want to kind of get into the weeds, might be better to sort of take those offline and connect with us separately. Happy to hop on a phone call or have a quick meeting. But if there's sort of general questions that you have that you think would benefit other folks as well, then happy to answer those. So does anyone have any questions? I guess that's my question for you. Victoria.
Hi, so I will be applying for the ING grant, and I'm looking at the details of the online form for application details. Like, how much sort of text do you want? Like, do you have a length that you prefer?
Yeah, I don't remember off the top of my head for the in-kind grants if I did like a word limit for that one. There is word limits for the um uh just like yeah, no, there's not word limits for that one.
So
Sorry,
there
just
isn't
checking.
on the online form, maybe on the PDF it's noted, but
Mhm.
uh,
Yeah, I don't think for in-kind,
like a
and I think
paragraph.
yeah, I think exactly like a paragraph like would be excellent. I think for the in-kind, it doesn't need to be super intensive. Like I said, sometimes less is more with applications and just being really clear about what those needs are. It's always a tricky balance between being specific and detailed and providing the information that the adjudicators would need to make a decision, while also balancing that you don't want to overwhelm with information and then sort of overcomplicate. And so it's sometimes a tricky balance, but I'd say, yeah, a half a page to a page, even if it's a more larger event, then maybe that would be a good suggestion.
And a quick follow-up question is, my request, I mean, I'm including all of the costs that I'm going to, I guess that's a question. It could be capped at 2,000, but should I include all of the costs that I'm actually incurring? Like we're renting the Wellington Hall. So like, it's basically going to be all the costs and then it would be capped at two, or you could decide the amount.
Yeah,
Like,
so basically, so for the budget template, all you need to include for that section is anything that is related to the charges and fees bylaw. So that budget
yes.
template, that's all you're including. However, in the actual like application, I would note if there's other costs or other revenues going towards that project, because again, like it just helps to show that there's like some capacity, some momentum behind it, that there's other revenue sources or other expenses needed. But in terms of your grant requested amount, it's going to be specifically tied to the charges and fees bylaw and what things are valued at in there.
Great, thank you.
No worries. Any other questions? Liz? 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 Oh, you have to unmute yourself.
There we go. I was cursed with a crazy spelling. So there. Can you hear me? Can you hear me
Yeah,
now?
got
Okay,
it.
good.
It's okay. I get alien sometimes. I get it.
Okay. Oh yeah, yeah. So I'm relatively new to the county and absolutely new to this project. So or this group funding. So when let's say my project would need $5,000,
Mhm.
do I apply for $5,000 or do I apply for $2,000 or $3,000 hoping to get funding from somewhere else or find another source of funding? Like, what is the best strategy? And what's the best strategy?
No, great question. I mean, I wish I had a crystal ball answer in terms of what's going to be the best strategy, but it's different every year. My suggestion is with any project, it helps to show that there are additional revenues or other support behind it, because that's going to bolster your organization's capacity to be able to carry out that project. So I think even if your request is $5,000, showing that there's additional support towards it is a benefit in strengthening the application. Now, in some cases, maybe it's a new initiative, maybe you don't have other funding sources towards it. You can request for $5,000 and say, that this is something new that I'm working towards, but just have to be aware that you can request 5,000, but you may end up receiving like a partial amount of funding. So you may
Right.
end up eventually needing to find other sources of support anyways in order, or scaling down your project. And
That's what I
so,
was gonna ask. Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask. Like, could you? Because
yeah.
you wouldn't want to be in. You wouldn't want to be like. I mean, I don't mean like you don't want to be misleading. Like, let's say you were looking for 10 whatever things, and you end up getting partial funding from a grant, and then a little bit of outsourcing, but you can't do the full scale. That's not going against the spirit of the grant, correct?
No, no,
Okay.
definitely not. And I think like most of the time in cases like where someone has received partial funding, we're happy to have a conversation about what that looks like. But this kind of goes into the point I mentioned about being specific in your budget. And so maybe including information about here's what like plan A looks like, and here's what plan B looks like in terms of like a slightly scaled down project and what would still be able to be delivered. And but again, we're always happy to have those conversations even after the fact if there's grants awarded that have been partially supported, to have a conversation about kind of next steps. Mhm.
Great. And other quick question is there a list somewhere on the county foundation, and I should have looked at this before, of previous of projects that were funded like in the past couple of years or something, just to give me an
Absolutely.
idea before writing something.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's what I'll do is that I will pop in the chat a link to on our website where you can find that information.
Great.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from anyone? Was oh, what about matching funds or in kind from the organization? Uh, sorry, Cheryl, do you mean that you need to provide in kind information, or are you just saying?
Um, yeah, sorry. What my question is there a requirement for matching funds? Some grants have a
Yep.
requirement for matching funds
Mhm,
or funds provided by the organization, which might be in kind done by
mhm,
volunteers, which
mhm.
make up a matching amount to the grant.
Yeah, so there's no matching requirement for this grant. So there's no matching funds needed. Uh, for other like the benefit of others in the group, like we administer like another grant program called the Huff Family Fund. That one, for example, does have a matching requirement in which, if you request $5,000, you have to show that you have equivalent funding or in-kind resources as part of that. So I'll just throw that out there if anyone is looking for more information on that grant program, but great question. Okay. Any other questions, quandaries? Uh, oh, yeah. So, question from Diane, and then Becky, I'll get to your question. Will this be replayed? And so we will be sharing this on our website. So we typically, within a few days' time, will post it on our YouTube and then get it on our website so that if anyone wants to refer back to the webinar, they can. Becky.
That was my question. Excellent.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, we always like to have that as an option, just, if anyone can't make it, or if anyone wants to refer back to things, we always want to make sure that's available. Okay. Any other questions from folks? Going once, going twice? Well, thanks everyone so much for joining this morning. I realized it was a packed webinar. There was a lot to get through, and so I'm sure there will be other questions that come up as you sort of start to work on your applications. But we're always around, and the one last thing I'll throw out is we're happy to look at applications in advance. But if you send it to us the week before the deadline, then we can't guarantee that we can read your application and get back to you, because that's when everyone else is submitting it. That's when all the other questions are pouring in. So we're happy to look at things in advance, but yeah, definitely, give us enough time and notice so we can be able to provide you with the best feedback possible. All right. Thanks so much, all. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.